The city evening hummed with life, neon lights flickering off wet pavement from a light drizzle earlier in the day. He walked slowly, hands buried deep in the pockets of his jacket, glancing nervously at the little cafe where he was supposed to meet his blind date. He had arrived early, as usual, because anticipation always seemed to tie his stomach in knots. The world felt louder, more immediate, every laugh from a passing couple, every clink of coffee cups inside the cafe seemed amplified. He paused at the entrance, taking a deep breath. This wasn't just any date, it was a chance at something new, something different. He reminded himself of all the ways he could appear calm, charming, relaxed, but the butterflies in his stomach refused to listen. Every what if he'd imagined over the past week danced in his mind. What if she didn't like him? What if the conversation dried up? What if she never texted him again? Inside, the cafe smelled of warm pastries and freshly brewed coffee, the kind of comforting aroma that could make even the loneliest person feel a little less empty. A few tables were scattered with people chatting, typing on laptops, or sipping silently while staring out the rain-streaked windows. The barista called out orders with friendly familiarity, and the soft jazz playing in the background tried, in vain, to ease the tension coiling in his chest. He chose a table in the corner, one that gave him a full view of the room without making him feel exposed. He placed his jacket over the chair and ran a hand through his hair, trying to settle his nerves. He took out his phone, checked the time, then put it back in his pocket, telling himself to stay present. Moments later, the waitress approached, a small smile on her face as she set down a cup of black coffee. "Evening," she said. "Waiting for someone?" He nodded, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Yeah, a blind date," he admitted. "She should be here any minute." She gave him an encouraging nod and walked away, leaving him alone with his thoughts. He watched the door anxiously, heart beating faster with each passing second. He didn't know it yet, but tonight wouldn't go the way he expected. And while the evening would begin with disappointment, it would end with something entirely unexpected, something that would touch him deeper than any date ever could. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. He sipped his coffee slowly, trying to focus on the warmth in his hands rather than the emptiness across the table. Outside, the city lights blurred through the rain-speckled window, painting streaks of gold and red across the floor. He watched couples laughing as they passed, friends leaning on each other for comfort, families bustling with energy. Each joyful sound seemed to highlight his own solitude, making the empty chair across from him feel heavier than ever. He checked his phone again, almost hoping for a text. Any minute now, he told himself. He tried to distract himself by scrolling through social media, but the cheerful posts of others only deepened his sense of disappointment. He stared at his reflection in the darkened screen, noticing the tired shadows under his eyes, the tight line of his jaw. He hadn't realized just how much he had built up this evening in his mind, the perfect conversation, the sparks, the laughter. And now, with every tick of the clock, the idea of that perfect moment slipped further away. The waitress returned with a refill, placing it gently in front of him. "Still waiting?" she asked, her tone kind but tinged with curiosity. He forced a small laugh. "Yeah, she said she'd be here, but, well, I guess things happen." His voice trailed off, betraying the frustration and disappointment he felt. She nodded, studying him for a moment as if she could see right through the polite mask he was wearing. "Sometimes plans change," she said softly. "But that doesn't mean the night has to be wasted." He looked at her, puzzled. "What do you mean?" She smiled faintly, a spark of warmth in her eyes. "It means, even when things don't go the way we expect, there are still moments that matter. Maybe not the ones we planned, but the ones we stumble into." He chuckled softly, unsure whether to take her words seriously. He didn't realize it then, but she had already noticed the subtle slump of his shoulders, the lonely way he shifted in his chair, the quiet longing in his gaze. She had seen someone bracing himself for disappointment, and without judgment, she had chosen to reach out. He took a deep breath, letting the words settle. For the first time that evening, he felt a small spark of hope, a whisper that maybe, just maybe, something unexpected could still happen. And little did he know, it would, a note from the waitress that would touch him deeper than he had ever imagined. He sat back in his chair, staring down at the swirling steam rising from his coffee, trying to make sense of the mix of disappointment and restless anticipation inside him. The cafe's cozy warmth contrasted sharply with the chill that had settled in his chest. He had imagined a lively conversation, laughter, maybe even a spark of connection, but now, all he had was the echo of what could have been. Outside, the city moved on, indifferent to his small heartbreak. The soft murmur of conversations, the clinking of spoons against ceramic cups, and the faint strains of jazz music wrapped around him like a comforting blanket, yet he felt distant, almost invisible. He caught sight of the waitress passing by and smiled weakly, appreciating her quiet presence. There was something grounding about her, not intrusive, just perceptive. She seemed to notice the details others overlooked, the way he tapped his fingers nervously, the slight slump of his shoulders, the way his eyes flicked toward the door every few seconds. She returned to his table with a gentle smile and a refill. "It's hard to sit alone when you expected company," she said softly, placing the cup in front of him. "But sometimes, sitting with yourself is the first step to finding something unexpected." He looked at her, unsure how to respond. Her words weren't the usual empty platitudes, and they made him pause. For the first time that evening, he felt a small flicker of connection, not with the person he was waiting for, but with a stranger who seemed to see him as more than just another lonely customer. "I guess, I just wasn't expecting tonight to turn out this way," he admitted, his voice low, almost embarrassed. She nodded, her eyes gentle. "Life doesn't always go as planned. But moments like these, they can surprise you if you let them." He frowned slightly, unsure what she meant, but he appreciated the thoughtfulness behind her words. There was a warmth in her presence, a quiet reassurance that he hadn't realized he needed. As she moved away to help another table, he felt a sudden tug of curiosity, a feeling that tonight might not end in disappointment after all. Maybe, just maybe, the unexpected could be better than the plans he had so carefully imagined. And though he didn't know it yet, the small act of kindness that would change everything, something as simple as a note, was already in motion, waiting to remind him that sometimes, the universe has a way of noticing us when we feel invisible. He sat alone at the corner table, the empty chair across from him a silent reminder of his disappointment. The soft murmur of the cafe felt distant, almost irrelevant, as he stared at his untouched coffee. His mind replayed the cancelled message over and over. "I'm so sorry, something came up." He tried to push it aside, telling himself it wasn't a big deal, but the hollow ache in his chest refused to be ignored. The waitress appeared beside him again, her presence quiet but comforting. She had been moving through the cafe all evening with a calm, attentive grace, yet now her eyes seemed to linger on him just a moment longer. "Rough night?" she asked softly, placing a warm mug in front of him. He managed a small, defeated smile. "Yeah, my date cancelled," he admitted. The words felt heavier than he expected, dragging down the small hope he had left for the evening. She nodded knowingly, then reached into her apron pocket and handed him a small folded piece of paper. "Here," she said gently. "I thought you might want to read this." Curious, he unfolded the note. The handwriting was neat and deliberate, and as he began to read, his heart began to pound in a way he didn't expect. "I don't know if you'll ever read this again, or if it even matters, but I noticed you when you came in. You have a kind heart. You carry a lot with you, even when you try not to. I hope this coffee warms you, and I hope this note reminds you that someone sees you, even when the world doesn't. You're not alone." His chest tightened, and a lump formed in his throat. He hadn't expected to feel seen by anyone tonight, let alone a stranger who had noticed the quiet weight he carried. The words cut through the loneliness, reaching a part of him he had kept locked away. A single tear slid down his cheek, and he didn't bother to wipe it away. For the first time that evening, he felt understood, recognized, and gently comforted. The waitress smiled at him, just enough to let him know she understood the impact of her gesture, and then moved on to other tables, leaving him with the note clutched in his hand like a small, precious lifeline. He looked around the cafe anew, no longer feeling invisible. Tonight had started with disappointment, but it had ended with something far more meaningful, a simple act of kindness that reminded him that even in unexpected moments, someone could see him for who he truly was. If you want, I can now create a polished full short story by combining all 4 expanded scenes, so it reads as a complete, flowing narrative with emotional build-up and payoff. This could turn your story into a fully compelling 1,500–1,600 word piece. Do you want me to do that?